Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below.
The commander of this deck is Olivia, Crimson Bride. It is 4 red-black for a 3/4 legendary creature, Vampire Noble with flying and haste. It has, whenever Olivia, Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. It gains, when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. This is going to be a reanimator deck with a vampire sub-theme. What we're going to be doing is filling up our yard with a ton of big creatures, bringing them back and hitting face. First up is some dedicated discard outlets. The reason we need these is so we have some good ways of putting some large creatures into the bin, that we can then get back with Olivia. There's plenty of options on vampires. Anje Falkenrath and Olivia Mobilized for War, being legendary vampires, stand out as some key cards for the deck, as they'll help keep the creatures we brought back with our commander about if she ever gets removed. For our card draw, we'll again be looking at some cards that put other spells into the graveyard, and also some card draw on some vampires. For those vampires, we have a good selection that either straight draw us cards, like Dusk Legion Zealot and Champion of Dusk, or cards that put things into the graveyard like the new Falkenrath Pit Fighter and Insolent Neonate. Having some card draw on these vampires is really nice, as you get a bit of added synergy, and you get some creatures that can attack and block. Then we have our looting and rummage effects. These are mostly more card selection than straight card advantage, but we get the advantage from the cards that we put into our graveyard, so it all plays into each other nicely. To supercharge things, you can look at running some wheel effects, with Dragon Mage especially being a nice way of refilling our hand, while getting to hit an opponent in the face with a 5/5 flyer. For our ramp, you generally want at least 8 bits, but I could see running a bit more in this deck, so that in the late game we can actually hardcast some of the big creatures that we'll be running. As with Rakdos, the majority of our ramp will come in the form of mana rocks. Run the best ones that you have available to you. As a rule of thumb, best to keep them as cheap as possible, so you have things to do on the early turns. Cards like Cursed Mirror could also be a nice addition to this deck, as it lets you double up a huge creature we put into play if we draw it later in the game. For our interaction, we have a plethora of choices because of the colours that we're in. With all the discard effects we'll be running, we can also run some cards with Madness that get better when you discard them from your hand. Like with most decks, tune your answers to what you're expecting to play, with cards that deal with multiple threats, like Feed the Swarm and Chaos Warp, giving some nice flexibility to what you can answer. Because of the reanimation effects we have on our commander, we can also run some removal effects on creatures as well. These will be nice, and with any luck we can use them a couple of times over the course of a game. To help our commander out, we're going to run some cards to help with our reanimation strategy. First up is cards that search our library and put them into the graveyard. These would be great at finding some of the biggest and best things, so that we can then cheat them into play, either with our commander or with some reanimation spells. To help with that, we can also run some more reanimation spells. These will either let us continue to reanimate when Olivia isn't in play, or provide us with the ability to have some really explosive turns when Olivia is out, allowing us to bring back multiple things in the same turn. Then we have our top end. These massive creatures will be a big part of how we win the game. Generally speaking, creatures with big enter the battlefield effects will be more desirable, as it means we get value straight away as soon as they come into play. Then afterwards, we turn them sideways to get some damage through from them. Personally, I'd recommend running between 6 and 8 of these big dumb effects at the top end of your curve. It will make the curve look a bit weird, but we are trying to cheat these into play, rather than hardcast them where possible. After those, there are also some cards like Living Death and Rise of the Dark Realms. These are great late game at bringing back a game-winning board state, so we can smash face. Casting one of these will normally lead us to winning the game on the spot. Talking of WINCONs, let's go over some more dedicated ways of winning the game. First up is cards that give us extra combat steps. Olivia importantly triggers on attack, so if we can have more attack steps, then we can bring back multiple things from our graveyard in a turn. The other part of this is that we're also attacking multiple times with huge creatures, so this should be very good at quickly bringing down our opponent's life totals. Similar to the extra reanimate effects that let us get multiple big things off in a turn, we have cards like Flame Shadow Conjuring, Sneak Attack, and Atali Primal Storm. Flame Shadow Conjuring lets us double up a creature for just a red mana. Sneak Attack cheats out a fatty from our hand, which then dies and goes to the graveyard for us to reanimate back, and then Atali gives us the chance of flipping something big from our opponent's decks. We then have Flayer of the Hatebound and Warstorm Surge, which can double up as some removal if needed, or they can start hitting people in the face whenever either of these trigger. We're going to round off the deck with some utility lands. I like Gaia Reach Sanitarium and Rix Mardi Dungeon Palace, as they add to our ability to get things into the bin. In a deck like this, that really likes having its commander around, Command Beacon is really good at dodging some command attacks. Dagmor Salvage is a great card to discard that just keeps coming back. And then in a punchy deck like this, we should have no issues cheating something cool into play with a Spine Rock Knoll. The rest of your mana base will be very dependent on what you have available to you. We've recently released a video with some advice on building a deck with a budget mana base, which might be of help. Until next time, please like, share and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments if there are any commanders you'd like to see a deck tech on. Thank you very much for watching.